Ever worked the graveyard shift alone in a gas station in the middle of nowhere? I'm just your average college kid trying to make some extra cash. One summer, I took a part-time job at this gas station. Not the kind you'd find in the city, mind you. No, this was one of those lonely stations that sit on the edge of the world, or at least it felt like it. Nestled in the embrace of thick woods, the only beacon of civilization was the gas station itself, its fluorescent lights cutting through the darkness like a dull knife. The place had a certain quiet charm during the day, with the occasional car pulling in for fuel and maybe a snack. But come nightfall, it transformed. The woods seemed to creep closer, their shadows stretching out like long, gnarled fingers. The silence was heavy, only broken by the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional hoot from a distant owl. Working the night shift, you learn to appreciate the quiet. Most nights, I just flip through textbooks or binge-watch some show on my phone, the soft glow of the screen my only companion. But there's a flip side to solitude. It's like a coin. One side is peaceful, the other eerie. At times, the quiet felt oppressive, like a thick blanket smothering the life out of everything. And the darkness outside, it was like a wall. You couldn't see beyond it, and you couldn't help but wonder what was lurking just out of sight. And then there were the nights when there were no customers. Those nights were the worst. The hours would stretch on endlessly, each minute feeling longer than the last. The silence would get so intense that even the smallest noise would make me jump. And the darkness outside, well, it felt like it was closing in, ready to swallow me whole. It was during one of these quiet nights that something happened that I'll never forget. I was restocking the shelves when I heard a knock on the glass door. The sound was hollow, like the tapping of a skeletal finger, and it echoed in the empty station. I lifted my gaze from the rows of candy bars, chips, and sodas I had been arranging. There, through the glass door, stood a figure. A silhouette, really, framed by the dim glow of the station's outside lights. It was hard to make out any specifics about the figure. Its size, its clothing, even its gender, all seemed indistinct. But there was something about its stillness that felt odd. It was as if it was frozen in place, a human-shaped statue. It didn't move, didn't try to come in, just stood there. A chill ran down my spine like icy fingers tracing my vertebrae, but I shook it off, attributing it to the late hour and the eerie silence of the night. I told myself it was probably just some drunk who had lost his way. So I returned to my task, trying to ignore the figure at the door. I buried myself in the mundanity of my work, focusing on the familiar rustle of chip bags and the clink of soda cans. But there was this nagging feeling, a prickling sensation at the back of my neck. It was as if I was being watched, studied by unseen eyes. I told myself it was just my imagination playing tricks, spurred on by the late hour and the solitude. Yet the feeling persisted, growing stronger with each passing second. It was like a whisper in my mind, a silent warning that something was not right. Finally, I couldn't ignore it any longer. I looked up, my heart pounding in my chest. The figure was still there, standing silently at the door. But now, it was closer. The silhouette had become more distinct, but still remained faceless, a dark enigma against the dim light. But when I looked up again, the figure was still there, and this time, it was closer. The figure was now standing right outside the glass door, just staring at me. A chill ran down my spine. It was like a wave of cold dread washing over me, freezing me to the spot. I could see him clearly now. The man was covered in a dirty, worn-out coat that hung off his frame like a shroud. His hat was pulled low, casting a shadow over his face, hiding his eyes from me. But I could feel them, those eyes. It was as if they were boring holes right through me. He just stood there, not moving, not speaking, just watching. It was like he was waiting for something, but I couldn't figure out what. Maybe he was waiting for me to make a move, to do something. So I did. I decided to confront him, to ask him what he wanted, why he was standing there in the middle of the night, just staring. I moved towards the door, my heart pounding in my chest. Each step felt like a mile. The air was thick with tension, like the calm before a storm. When I was just a few steps away from the door, something happened. The lights in the station flickered, once, twice, 3 times. Then they went out. I was plunged into darkness. I could hear my own breathing, loud and fast in the quiet night. I stood there frozen in the darkness, waiting for the lights to come back on. And when they did, he was gone. Just like that. No trace of him. It was as if he had never been there. But I knew he had. I could still feel the chill in the air, the dread in my heart. When the lights came back on, the man was gone, but that wasn't the end of it. That night has stayed with me. It's a memory that haunts my dreams, a story that chills my bones. And each time I tell it, I can't help but look over my shoulder, half expecting to see that figure standing there watching me. I checked the clock. It was 3 a.m., but wait, wasn't it just 1 a.m. a minute ago? Confusion clouded my mind, a thick fog that I couldn't shake off. With the slow, creeping realization of the missing time, a cold shiver ran down my spine. The silence of the night was suddenly deafening, broken only by the steady ticking of the clock. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Each second seemed to stretch into an eternity, amplifying the mystery of the missing 2 hours. I decided to check the security cameras. Maybe they could provide some answers. But as I looked at the screen, my heart sank. The cameras had stopped working at exactly 1 a.m. The last image frozen on the screen was the deserted gas station under the dim glow of the street lights. A chill ran through me. An eerie stillness hung in the air, as if time itself had stopped. I reached for the phone, hoping to call my boss, but to my growing horror, the line was dead. I tried again and again, but there was no dial tone, only silence. The walls of the gas station seemed to close in on me, trapping me in this labyrinth of fear and confusion. Panic clawed at my insides. I was alone, terribly alone. The weight of the missing 2 hours hung over me like a dark cloud. The gas station, normally a beacon of light in the quiet night, now felt like a prison. I tried to calm my racing heart, to convince myself that there was a rational explanation for all of this. But the silence of the night, the missing 2 hours, the halted cameras, the dead phone line, it all felt too sinister, too carefully orchestrated. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, I heard it. It started as a faint rustling, barely audible above the ticking of the clock. But then it grew louder, closer. I froze, fear gripping my heart. That's when I heard it, the soft, chilling whisper coming from behind me. I turned around and there he was, the man from outside, inside the station, whispering my name. A cold shiver ran down my spine, my heart pounding like a hammer against my chest. I could feel the icy grip of fear clutching at my throat as his voice echoed around the room, a whisper that seemed to seep into my very bones. His eyes were wide and frantic, a wild desperation in them that made my blood run cold. "You have to leave," he pleaded, his voice a hoarse whisper. "You have to get out of here now!" His words were a chilling wind, blowing through the hollow silence of the gas station. "I used to work here," he continued, his voice trembling with fear. "Just like you, I was stuck in this godforsaken night shift. One night, just like this one, something happened. I can't explain it, but I was gone, vanished, like I was swallowed up by the night itself." His words hung in the air, a haunting echo that sent a shudder down my spine. "I was trapped," he whispered, his voice barely above a breath. "Trapped in an endless loop of time. I've been trying to warn others, but it's like I'm a ghost. No one can see me, no one can hear me." His eyes were pleading now, begging me to understand. "You have to leave," he repeated, his voice filled with a desperate urgency. "You have to get out before it's too late, before you become like me." And then, just as suddenly as he had appeared, he was gone, vanished into thin air. I was alone in the gas station once again, the silence pressing in on me with a weight that was almost unbearable. I quit the job the next day, but sometimes I still wake up at 3 in the morning hearing that chilling whisper in my ear.